that you abolished the diaper tax.
The thing is, if you've met one person with dementia, you've met one person with dementia. Every single one is different right now.
When you're the dean of the School of Communications at Quinnipiac University
because it's allowed me to understand education.
Started traveling the country, just training people to understand these disabilities.
That was one of the reasons why I brought you on to discuss that.
Monday night, 8 p.m. EST.
Hello, everybody, and Happy New Year. Welcome to Pamela Roth Live for the new year 2023. It is Monday, January 9th, and we are starting this year with our new show. And so this evening, I am very happy to start off the new year with comedy. We've had enough sadness and everything from 2022, so let's start off the new year with some fun. Tonight's guest is the unstoppable Helaine Witt, who went from school teacher, she's now retired, to comedy queen. We are going to be sitting down this evening with Helaine Witt. She is multi-talented, and when I say that, I am not bragging about her. It's totally true, and you're going to hear from her yourself. She started in her early days performing stand-up at the Holy City Zoo in San Francisco, to her recent appearances on MSNBC and Peacock. Helaine has always brought her sharp wit and her unique sense of humor to the stage. She is a one-woman powerhouse. And in this podcast tonight, we're going to learn all about Helaine. Helaine, please join us. Welcome, Helaine Witt.
Thank you. Whoever that person is probably doesn't have to clean kitty litter because she's that great. Oh my goodness. Thank you, Pamela.
Oh, you're welcome. Listen, I have to clean kitty litter too. Now, just speaking about kitties, I'm sure, do you ever have any situations with a cat or cats with tinsel?
Did you?
Yes. So recently, I had the house decorated for Christmas and Hanukkah, and I had all the tinsel, and I didn't think the cat Lucky would have any issues with the tinsel until one morning the cat walks past me and something shiny caught my attention hanging out from underneath his tail. There was a little bit of tinsel coming out of his little kitty cat butthole. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, this isn't good. So I had to actually follow him and grab the string and start pulling on it. And it was not very pleasant because he's looking at me with a meow. What are you doing back there? And after I pulled it out, I ended up having a little surprise on the end of the string. Really gross, but just so you know, keep tinsel away from your cats. Because when he swallowed it, it did come out shiny from the other end.
Wow. I do have a tinsel story from this year's holiday that I forgot about. Could I say it since you asked me?
Yes.
Okay, so I have a niece who lives on a farm. My brother lives on the land too. And she showed us on Facebook that her cat was under the tree with a snake, but the snake was dead. The next day, she thought it was tinsel because it was moving around. It was a live snake. He brought in another snake from outside, and it was not tinsel. It was a snake. So I did have a story. When you first asked me, I said, I'm Jewish. We don't do tinsel. When I grew up, and I see you integrated Hanukkah with the tinsel as well.
Well, because I ended up getting blue and silver tinsel, so I wanted to make it like a Christmas or a Hanukkah mass.
That's great. Not great, amazing that your cat swallowed it and it came out the other end. Is that what happened?
Yeah, exactly.
Or sat in it? Wow,
no, he swallowed it. And, and I started pulling it out, wondering what's going to be on the other end. And then it came out and I found it. It was
But
really
it was sticking out, which is gross, but amazing. I want to tell that to my veterinarian for $100 an hour.
Well, this little Jewish girl over here, former yeshiva, was like obsessed with Christmas this year. There's not a Christmas tree around New York City that I didn't take a photo of and post.
Uh-oh, my mother would say, what's with all this Christmas?
I know. Look, Christmas balls and matzah balls, it was all the same. So tell me, where did you and I had the pleasure of meeting you. It's now over 4 years ago through, the mother of all comedians, Gladys Simon. So I ended up meeting you over 4 years ago now at the Comic Strip Live.
That's so exciting. Thank you.
You're very welcome. So how did you get into all of this?
Well, I'm older than you, and in the not the 60s, but whenever it was, I lost my teaching job. New York had a problem with their economy, and I moved to California because if you go into San Francisco, wear a flower in your hair. So I moved with my friends to California. That's what happened during this period of time where there were no teaching jobs and everyone was moving to California. So I'm walking down the street, and this guy in a leisure suit, sleazy looking guy, standing outside this comedy club going, comedy, 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 coming to comedy club. He was a barker. So he told me to go in, and it was the farthest thing from my mind, that moment in my life. I had been divorced. I tried to get a job just to maintain my life there. That's where I was going, just a dumb job where I could be with my friends at night in those hippie times, okay? So I walk in, just to the environment. I wanted to paint a picture. So he says, stand on the stage. And this is where Robin Williams was, before Mork and Mindy took him. It was right around when Mork and Mindy took him. But anyway.
Oh, I remember Mork and Mindy. Remember Nanu?
Yeah, but it was right at that time. So he wasn't there that day. But the guy said, stand on the stage. He said, look around. By the time I left that stage, he had signed me up for improv with a guy who was in Robin Williams' improv group, Jose Simon, who was Compton Floss's grandnephew, whoever. Compton Floss was a Latin performer. That's all I'll say about him. I don't know enough. But anyway, back to this. And then I took writing for other comics, and I took stand-up. So there I was sending jokes to Joan Rivers because this guy told me how. That's the shortened version.
Did you ever, I know you had mentioned something to me off screen about Joan Rivers. Yeah. Please share with us, because, something, if I think of one of my role models, Joan Rivers was definitely one of my role models.
Yeah, well, in those days, she had an album and, record album. And my friend Bob Reynolds and I, who I can't find, I wish I could find him, I can't. They are near the Holy City Zoo. We would listen to the album over and over, and we watched her host the Johnny Carson late night show because she took over a lot, and we tape it. And it was like after a while, Pamela, I was channeling her, like seeing a dog in the street. What would Joan Rivers say? Just like if you watch Fashion Police, what's going to come out of her mouth when she sees a dress? That's how I was thinking. So before you know it, this guy said, you go to the library, you look up their manager's name in a big reference manual. If you know what a book is, they had them in those days. And before you knew it, I was sending her jokes. And this is a framed copy of her paying me for a joke. And she used pink stationery. Could you see this is pink? So yes. This is a copy, but it was the most exciting piece of mail I ever got. It was a pink envelope. And she used my joke on Johnny Carson. And then, if that wasn't exciting enough, fast forward to last year, they showed in the movie on Peacock, which you mentioned, the movie's called Good Timing, and I spoke on MSNBC with Joe Firestone, showing Joan Rivers telling the joke and me telling the joke, because she said it 3 times and it bombed. So they showed me saying this and her doing it. The joke, me, and it's in the movie, and they needed permission from the Johnny Carson estate. It was very exciting. I have a copy because this guy Bob Reynolds and I taped her all the time on the VHS, and I turned it into CD, and I taped her all the time so I could think like her. And I'm still excited that it happened. Believe me.
Can you share the joke with us?
Sure, I can now. But when I signed a contract, it said I could never utter the jokes again. And I will say they sent you a list of what subjects to talk about, and a lot of it was at the time, I know you're younger, but it was Liz Taylor, like insult jokes. So those I'll never utter again unless I find out she told them on Johnny Carson. Then I feel I could tell them. So I'll tell you 2 jokes. So the one that bombed was like this. Remember the late Olivia Newton-John had that song, Let's Get Physical. So it was that year. So she comes out on the stage and she goes, it's income tax day. And my accountant is dancing around the office singing, let's get fiscal, like fiscal year. So she says it once, and you can see this on the MSNBC or the movie Good Timing. And then she goes, That was my big joke. Yeah, let's get fiscal, fiscal. She said it 3 times. Let's get fiscal, fiscal. And the people, and then she says, I thought that was going to be the big joke. So my joke bombed 3 times on the Johnny Carson show. I'm very proud of it. I love that. See how it makes you laugh. So when I tell it on stage, which I feel I'm allowed because she did, but the rest of them I'll never utter again because I have a joke about that. I say, she's dead, so can I tell the other 8 jokes? No, Helaine is not dead. Pamela would agree with that. So that's my joke. But the other joke I told was something like this. In LA, statistically, every marriage ends in divorce. So I put my money in the Infidelity Savings Bank.
Nice.
Instead of
Fidelity Savings Bank.
So those are 2. And, I'm very proud. And I sold a greeting card, too, that I have hanging on my wall. Do you want to see that also?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
This one, I love you. You have to tell us afterwards. You are in a Beatles memorabilia.
A Beatles room. Yes, yeah. Look at my Beatles room.
So for everybody watching, Helaine is a Beatles aficionado. A Beatles fanatic aficionado.
And I met the Beatles because I left home in a boat and I lied to my mother and said I was going on a student ship. So I have pictures in my Beatle room of John Lennon singing to me. It's on my Facebook as well. John Lennon singing to me, and I have a picture with Paul. So here it is. See, that's Paul, John, and 2 of the men that walked around Central Park with them. And to meet them in Central Park, I had to lie to my mother and miss college that day. So I'll show you my greeting card. It's and I use it as a joke, Pamela, because you can take your greeting card and word it like a joke or a greeting card. And unlike Joan Rivers, they let me use it as a joke legally. So it says, happy birthday to someone who's passing through the information age and heading for the inflammation age. And it shows
I like that.
an analgesia counter where this was like a Best Buy. Now, when I wrote the joke, inflammation, I meant this, bags. They meant analgesia counter, inflammation of some other sort. But it's very exciting to sell a joke to a greeting card company. And Bruce and I, our friend Bruce Lipsky and I send them a lot, and we get rejected a lot.
I met Bruce. I've done a couple of gigs with him. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, we talk at 6 a.m. while he's on the treadmill. At least someone's doing their exercise.
Well, at least he's moving something other than his bowels at that moment.
Woo! Or his wife, for that matter, because I guess she's asleep. I talk to Ziggy at midnight, and I talk to Bruce in the morning. Now everyone knows my secret.
Right, and in the middle of the night, we add George to it.
Well, he calls at 4 a.m. and then apologizes. And he says he has sundowners or sunuppers, so that's why he calls people at 4. Thank you for letting me share. Now you could ask me anything else.
Okay, so we discussed the Beatles, and now we're going to discuss. So what actually, well, like you said, got you into comedy, but who were your role models? Like, who inspired you?
Well, Joan Rivers inspired me, like I told you the story about how we channeled her. And I wasn't even thinking of comedy when I walked by that day. But then, Robin Williams used to come by the club because he was going back and forth to the John Belushi trials because he was with John Belushi when he died. And of course, you being a lawyer, you can appreciate this. So he'd stop at the club, and just watching Robin, as you can imagine, with his improv troupe, how could you ever do improv and not just be blown away by the accents he does, the gestures he does, just being that free.
It was everything about Robin. Robin's mannerisms, his body language, the fact that he could just change from character to character. It was like all these people, all these personas jumping out of him. You didn't know which one to watch first. It was incredible. And you actually got to see that firsthand.
And these were his friends, and I'm honored that they taught me improv. Not that, what can I say? It was a nice memory of being in improv in that city. And my brother reminded me, my brother has a fiber optics company, and he reminded me that he came to see me at doing open mic back in the 80s in San Francisco. And guess who was with me doing the open mic that night? Margaret Cho.
Who?
Margaret Cho.
Oh, wow.
You know Margaret Cho?
Yeah, of course, Margaret Cho.
Her family owned one of the buildings we did open mic in, and before the open mic one night, I'll never forget it, she said to us, I'm gonna make it.
Now, do you do any impersonations too, or voices the way?
Only one, and that is like a Jewish mother. Like my cousin Ruthie, I asked her to tape this for me last week. I went to see her in the nursing home. She's older than us. She goes, Bubba, Mama Shayna, Helaine, it's cousin Ruthie. That's really, but my coach, Vanessa Hollingshead, do you know her? She's a headliner.
Yes, I met Vanessa.
Yeah, well, Vanessa helps me with my set. And one of the things that I say is Mick Jagger said this thing. And then she says, just say it like him. Like for her, she could do any accent in the world. She goes, go ahead, Helaine, say satisfaction, So it's very hard for me. I'm self-conscious, but I'm working on at least saying that word for the joke, for the sake of the joke.
So you've been doing, since you left San Francisco, where did you go after that to do comedy?
Thank you. I did open mics in San Francisco. I never really got gigs or anything. And I left comedy. My teaching job, it wasn't like I worked from 9 to 3. I stayed at school late. Some teachers could be so organized. I taught in South Jamaica, Queens, and it was very challenging. They wanted you to work with each child individually instead of like 30 kids lesson plan. And anyway, the bottom line is I didn't spend the whole few decades on comedy. When I retired, I went back to Gladys Simon, who you mentioned, and I said, hey, Gladys, remember me? And I made believe I had been to her open mic back in the day. I really only went once because I didn't frequent bars. And the fact that I remembered going to a bar and going up to the open mic proves that I didn't know Gladys very well. But I didn't lie, but I said, I'm an old timer from your old room. And she put me up. So I say I started back in the 90s, or I started back when I retired in 2011. And I talk about the kids in the school, how tough the school was, how tough the kids are. And I just exaggerate. And I did, Pamela, see some of the students at a funeral. I went to a funeral and some of my old students were outside the funeral parlor. And I said, you know what? I'm telling jokes now on stage, and you kids inspired those jokes. One of them had been to prison, things like that.
Well, that's where, something from all my years of experience between being married, being divorced, being out on the dating circuit. That's enough to inspire horror movies, actually, not even jokes. And then, of course, being an attorney all these years, I have such a vast amount of experiences to draw from when I do stand-up comedy. Because, that's the best part, when you draw from your personal experiences to do your comedy, whether it's family experiences or, the self-deprecating jokes. And, we Jews know very well, we have to suffer for our craft.
That's funny. Well, Pamela, may I say that I was married twice, and I was married to a Chinese guy. And I have jokes about being married to both. And today in the politically correct world, I don't always tell the jokes I would ordinarily tell. And then sometimes I tell it and it gets a big laugh because of the nature of the audience. And they think like, whoa. And then I say, that's the politically incorrect portion of the show. Like I make a joke about it. But
yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
Certain bits.
Because you've obviously been in comedy way, way longer than I. You've actually worked with the greats. You've met them.
Thank you.
How have you seen comedy change from when you started to the present?
Well, I know that from what you read, that the political correctness is getting in the way. So like I do avoid certain jokes. On the other hand, I make a joke about avoiding those jokes. I know comics who are headliners who have to have squeaky clean sets on a ship, or they get thrown off the ship if the wrong person hears it, or they get a complaint, things like that. Like there's pressure. And then there are environments I perform in that it's okay to make jokes like that people want it. So it's really, I don't really have one answer for it, but I do have an ex-Chinese husband, you know. And you know what? I found a video where he used one of my cousin's jokes. When I told my cousin I was marrying a Chinese guy, she said, "Oh, you'll have 3 New Years." Now, that's not a politically incorrect joke. But then I found an old video of my ex-husband, and there he is telling my cousin's joke. I was married to a Jewish girl, and we had 3 New Years. Hey, that's my cousin Lois Feldman's joke.
Well, it was your ex-husband in comedy too?
Yeah, he met me, and I think he saw, oh, I bet she has a father who could buy me a car and a washing machine. And, you know, I think I was a schmuck, but, you know, we call it love, right?
When you married him, did you have to perform certain acts, you know, one from column A, one from column B?
That's a good one, Pamela. I'm going to steal that. No, you could use it. That's funny.
No, you can use it.
That's
I
really
have
good.
a Chinese ex-husband.
Well, you know what? One thing about Pamela, I want to say on the airwaves to all her thousands of listeners, like filling Shea Stadium, 55,000 people. I want to say that, see, I used a Beatle reference. I want to say Pamela's one of these people, and I didn't know her too well before. I knew her a little bit. Everything out of her mouth is funny. And I say, write that down, write that down, write that down. She'd have to have a pen and pencil for everything that comes out of her mouth. She's so funny.
Thank you. Thank
and
you.
I mean that. I don't compliment
I really do
people.
appreciate
For
it.
no reason.
I have always wanted to do comedy. I was always the funny kid, the so-called class clown. I was always the funny one at home.
Oh.
And I think it's the humor that really, you know, that kept the family together and you know, either got out of trouble, sometimes got me into trouble. But I always find, no matter how bad a situation is or how serious a situation is, I always manage to find the humor in it. Because you can't take everything so seriously, you know, and what's a smile? It's an upside down frown. But I love comedy. I really do. I love performing. I so enjoy making people laugh.
And Pamela's very generous. We have a friend we talked about, George. She'll pick him up from Staten Island, and who knows if she worked all day, take him to New Jersey, turn around, take him back home. She's so nice. And we love Pamela for that. All George's friends love how nice you are to him, because we're not as nice. Kidding.
Yeah, George is definitely a character. I have met the most fascinating people through Gladys and through comic strip. And so that's me. And I want to thank you because I count you as one of my funny friends. You too. And I want to say something. There's a guy who I do comedy with once a month, and he says, I'll never pay $14 to go to open mic. I said, do you want to know what I got from going to Gladys's and paying $14? I got on Wendy Williams 3 times from who I met. I got 2 best friends, Bruce and Ziggy, and everyone else. I got on other things, other leads to other things, plus getting on a comic strip stage because it's a real comedy club, and you have pictures from there every week. So, and her Zoom every week, and meeting comics. Nikki and Mindy Rickles. I mean, so just because this is a lesson, just because someone says you have to pay for something or you get less time or you're driving 50 miles, that's a double negative. Don't stop yourself because you're reasonable, because you're going to miss out. It's true. And there's a number of times that I've gone there too, that, you know, I would sometimes get there late because I'm stuck in traffic and I pay my $14 and I don't even get to go on. But I'm not going there specifically to get on. You know, what I've learned from watching other performers and friendships and the advice that I would get from Gladys, that to me, you know, it's worth more than $14, you know, and you got to pay it forward. And what if you're supporting it? The culture? What if you're supporting the group? What if you're supporting the energy around Gladys, the impetus? What if you are? Right. And you get a free drink, so it's a soda. But I really tell this guy, I think you're really wrong not to go for that reason. I know 2 people who say that. I refuse to go to a mic for $14. I won't go out of the city. Well, you're missing out. I go all over, and so do you, Pamela. And I've had so many great experiences just going. I don't go for one result. Oh, there are only this amount of people in the audience. Who cares? You met a nice person. They called you to come back again. You know, I took George and I, well, Natalie Levant.
Yeah,
Natalie
she
is
went to
another,
Philly.
she's amazing. I took George to Philly. We did Philly round trip in one evening. And that was, I mean, it was door
I
to
did
door.
it once, and that's where I met Natalie, and I brought it to meat glass.
Right.
But I
That's,
know the ride.
right. What's his name? I think it's Bill's Birthday Bar downtown
Oh no,
there.
no, no! It's a cute name. It's called not Bill. Ray's Happy Birthday.
Oh, that's
Bar.
it. Ray's, right. It's Ray's Happy Birthday Bar. That's the one. And it's like 2 blocks off the main strip there where they have like all the Italian restaurants and the Philly cheesesteaks. So
Yes,
we
I ate
did
one.
right. Ray's Happy Birthday Bar. The room is like 2 by 2, but the energy in there is incredible. They have all these old, antiquated photos and things because I love nostalgia. I love all that. That's why it's like if I go to your apartment there into the Beatles closet, that's one closet I'm not going to come out of. I've come out of many
It's
closets.
not a closet. It's a room. It's a bedroom. Don't insult my Beatle room. No,
No. I have a funny
kidding.
closet story. Don't worry.
I'm kidding.
But no, we went to Philly one night. I took him back and forth, and then I'm going to be going to take him back. And I think between him and Natalie, I'll do some. I actually think I did some time in the room that night. Yes, Natalie put me on. And then another night, I actually drove all the way out to Maryland off the Chesapeake River and performed, and came back, and I was with Franola.
Wow.
So, these are incredible experiences. And if I'm
you went to Jack's show. I've gone to Jack's show in Tappan, New York.
Yes. Another place was really pretty. So, all these are great experiences, and the people that I'm meeting, that to me, it's priceless.
Priceless. And I go on Zoom every day to something called, I don't mind promoting it, jokezoom.com. This guy gave 3 years. It's almost 3 years. In 2 months, it'll be 3 years. Every day, 6 days a week, every day. And we've gotten so close, and you learn so much. And people work with 1 or 2 jokes a day. Like I already went from 10 to 11. We help each other. And we've gotten so close, and it's people all over. He lets anybody come who's been on stage. Jokezoom.com. And you drop in and out. If Pamela's busy, but she's free 6 a.m., she's up early, she drops in. No obligation at all to show up the next day or the next month.
No, you just right. You gave me that link. I'm going to join it.
And if anyone has a problem with somebody, you just tell Rob, and he'll straighten it out. Like, what if someone stole your joke, or what if someone was mean to you, which they usually aren't.
Well, I know people like that too. If I have a problem, they'll straighten it out too. But a lot of those people now are in jail.
I had one on my block, Mr. Crappenzano. That was his name.
Crappenzano?
Or Carpenzano, but maybe Crap. I've Googled it before, and it shows that he was taken from the block one day. He had all these children's toys in the back of his station wagon, and I'd look in there and say, wow, I wonder what he does for a living.
What was he, a pedophile?
No, he was a mafioso.
Okay.
But that's funny that you said that.
Yeah, you got to watch what I say sometimes.
That might have been better for him that day when he was taken. Oh, who said that?
What advice would you have for comedians starting out now in 2023?
I'd say be clean, because a lot of these youngsters, you go to the open mic and it's embarrassment for my friends who I bring. Don't be just filled with putz jokes and vagina jokes. I don't find it funny. You went to school for 12 years at least, and you had subjects every day of every month of every year. There are subjects to talk about other than
body parts.
And yeah. And that's a big one. You know, I'm a school teacher at heart. We have a boy who comes to Gladys's. He's 12 years old, and he's so funny. But his parents let him sit there, and I'm like the school teacher who looks over like, did he hear that? Did he hear that? Did he hear that? But that's not your question. Your question was, and he's going to be in the pro show this Thursday. I'm very proud that a 12-year-old is funnier than George and I combined, but it's true. But anyway, no. My advice is not to stop. Go to open mics, network your head off, write down everyone's name and number, and be about other people. like Pamela. Reach out to others. Don't have it all be, oh, I went to the mic and I this and I that. Like you're just one-sided. You have to be for the whole room.
Right. You have to be supportive of everybody else. I know, because I've seen that. I've been doing the open mics. I haven't been doing it too much lately because I have so many things going on. But when I was going weekly by Gladys, you have to listen and support everybody. And Gladys is very good like that, because she'll come over and she'll tell you, put your phone down, put your notes down, because she doesn't want everybody just sitting there focused on their notes of what it is that they want to say, because she wants everyone to be supportive and listen to what everybody else is doing on stage. You got to support the group.
Yeah. And a lot of people say that was a bad mic. Well, you're looking at different things about it than someone else. Like I went to one mic recently where I left feeling not funny. It was an unusual feeling, but there were these fellas there, young fellas, and I had this feeling. None of my girlfriends went that night, and it was just these fellas, particular fellas, and I felt like they didn't want to laugh. And it could have been my set. That's my point. Maybe you were on one subject, it wasn't agreeing with them, it was a sad subject, a morbid subject, and it didn't work. Don't just assume, oh, those boys or those men, or don't make some blanket judgment of the crowd.
Right. But what I
just
learned
cared
too,
about their friends.
but what advice I would give for somebody who's starting out right now is, if you're doing open mic, don't always do it at the same place. Do it in different locations, do it in the city, out of the city, because what you're going to find is you're going to have different types of audiences and different age groups. You can't always perform to one type of age group, because that's not realistic. Because if you're going to go on the road, if you're going to perform, say, in a suburban area or in more residential areas, let's say conservative areas, you have to be able to perform to everybody. And something else too that I learned, and glad, and I'm sure you'll agree with this too, is that, when they ask you sometimes, where do you want to be in the lineup? Of course, everyone always wants to be in the middle, because at that point the audience is warmed up. But that's also not really very reflective of you and your material as a performer. You have to be able to do the beginning spot. You got to be able to open up and get the crowd warmed up. You got to be able to do the check spot.
Very good, Pamela. Good advice. I once did Harlem. It was like an open mic, but it really was a show. It was full. I was in Harlem one night. The next day, 12 hours later, I was at a library in East Meadow, Long Island for seniors. So you have to know when to curse, if it's appropriate, or be in an urban setting to relate with those youngsters. And then you have to turn it around for the seniors. You have to have a lot of material. You have to write all the time and practice.
Yes. Oh, speaking of which, of like, you just picking up on what you just said about within 12 hours or 24 hours being in two totally opposite environments. On a Friday night, and my girlfriends were with me, on a Friday night, I was the opening act for an all-male strip review for all these women at a club, private club. There's a private function up in New Jersey. Oh my God, I was having a great time, because I'm thinking to myself, in case the guys needed any help getting into their G-string, I was all hands on deck to help them.
That's so funny.
But I performed that night for these male dancers, and it was a lot of fun. The very next night, Saturday night after sundown, I was doing kosher comedy under the sukkah for the women.
That is so funny.
And all my girlfriends were like, Pam, you can't do the same material last night. You can't do, the DK jokes. I said, well, if anything, I'm just going to talk about how Shlomi has a larger lulav and etrog than the other guys, at sukkahs.
Oh, that is so funny. That is a great joke. I perform at this Actors Temple, and Rabbi Jill lets me put on a show once a year. And she once told Natalie, not to use a joke, if anyone tells you to act your age, tell them to blankety blank off. And Rabbi Jill said, can we not curse? And it was my fault, because Greenberg, what's his name? Fame.
Jeff.
The other one,
Howard.
The one, Bob Greenberg was cursed. And I said it was on Zoom that year. And I said, Natalie, he's on the board of directors. He just cursed, so you may as well tell your dirty jokes. And it was my fault. I wrote it in the chat. And then she says her famous joke at the end, and Rabbi Jill scolded us. And it's not the first time someone cursed at Rabbi Jill's synagogue, but it's funny to me now. But Anyway, the Actors Temple is a place that the vaudevillians founded it so they could go pray between their Broadway shows. So that's why I joined it. It's the most wonderful shul. You have Jack Benny's plaque.
Oh, wow.
Then when I joined, they hit me up when Joe Franklin died. Oh, do you want to speak about Joe Franklin? Gladys told me some things to say because she did know him. And then, oh, do you want to pay for his plaque?
Make a little donation, a little tzedakah.
Oh, I get it. He died, and I'm the last member that joined. I'm only kidding. I love to give to them because it's where the vaudevillian. When I saw who went to that shul and the pictures on the wall, my goodness. And they're hooked up with the Friars Club in a way, which you went to also.
Right. Speaking of the Friars Club, it was amazing because I actually was very fortunate that George, and we keep talking about George, it's George Saltz. He is 88 years old and he is still standing and doing his comedy. And George had invited me there, and it was just so phenomenal to realize that this is the Friars Club. I'm in the day that I was there happened to have been Frank Sinatra's birthday.
Aww.
And there's a giant portrait of Frank Sinatra over in the fireplace. It was amazing. You know, we were in the Milton Berle room, and then there's this huge photo or painting of Jerry Lewis over the stairs.
He
and
was
then
the president
it was incredible.
when he died.
Yep.
Yeah. George and Gladys's friend was supposed to be inducted, like right when Jerry Lewis died.
Oh my goodness!
Around that time. But go ahead, I interrupted you.
Yeah, no, there was the Lucille Ballroom, and then there's giant photos and paintings all over of what's her name? It was Lucille Ball. There was something in there. I believe it was Barbara Streisand. It's just walking through history. It was just so incredible.
And how about the marble and the wooden staircases?
Oh, yes. Yep.
It's a beautiful building. I was lucky to go too. And I got a ticket when Rabbi Jill and the Actors Temple had a fundraiser. I got a ticket for George and he couldn't go. So I gave it to Jack and he couldn't go. So I brought my school secretary.
Very nice.
Because I paid $300 for the ticket.
Yeah, you don't want to miss that.
Well,
so where have you, well, I know you were in a documentary. Please tell us, you were in the documentary with George and with Natalie, correct?
Yes, I had a speaking part. So George, you know, I watch George when he's on stage. I watch if he's going to fall and I help him up, which I always do. So I'm watching him and he grabbed the mic stand. So afterwards, it was filmed in this documentary about them. He said, did you, and this was in the film, did you see I held the mic stand? I said, yes, I did. He said, I don't feel so well. So he said, I said, call me when you get home. And in front of the whole audience at the festival, Pamela, they all laughed at me. He said, no. He said, no. Like I was the Jewish mother, call me when you get home. Make sure you're okay. He goes, do you want to call me when you get home? He goes, no. And 1,000 people laughed at me. But then he said, you'll read about me in the paper in the morning. He made a snide joke about him dying on the way home because he had to drive back to Ardsley. So that, and then in another part of the movie, we're at Jack's show at the 76 house and I'm eating pasta and he walks in the room and I took a still of it and my older brother, who could only be an older brother, says, that's a wonderful, that was a nice shot of you eating stuff in your face. That really shows your talent right there. Now he, you know what I mean? Couldn't say, wow, you're in a movie, you're in another movie.
Yeah, it was a typical brother thing to say to a sister, of course.
Boy, when I was sick last week, calls every day, but when on MSNBC, it's just a joke we have.
So who are some of the other famous comedians that you've actually been able to meet and or work with? Okay,
Bobby Collins is a household word in comedy, and he is so nice to us. I went to see him and he took he's just a really sweet guy. And Linda Marcus Smith came to New York and I said, Bobby, you go from LA to New York. He's been in comedy 30 years and he knows everybody. He's been at the White House. He drops names, but he's such a nice person. When Bruce had long-term COVID and he's still, I mean, he's a long hauler, but when he was first sick, Bobby Collins actually called him for no reason except to be a decent person. And he's been on every one of my friends' podcasts. He's just this great guy. Anyway, so when he was in New York, I said, Bobby, you fly back and forth. But Linda Marcus Smith, she's a comic from Gladys. She lives in Las Vegas. She's in New York right now. Could we buy you a cup of coffee? He met us. We went to his place and he took us for dinner. And whenever I go to see him perform, he always apologizes that he can't spend time. I don't want to bother him. I just want to go see him. He's so funny. And I don't know many famous people. I know you think I know the Beatles, but Bobby is so nice to everybody. And he's been in comedy 30 years and he's just the sweetest guy. After the show, you go up to him and he's never conceited. He's sarcastic, so funny. He's so funny.
Well, I want to thank you for making the introduction. Helaine, just so everybody knows, Helaine introduced me the other day to Bobby Collins, and we had a wonderful telephone conversation. And up in the upcoming next few weeks, Bobby Collins is going to be sitting in the hot seat on Pamela Roth Live, and I will be interviewing him, and then he will be promoting a lot of his upcoming shows. I know he's coming to New York, I believe in into January, February. He has some shows coming up out in Long Island. So he's going to be speaking of those.
I go to see him when I can. And another thing he does is one of his daughters is not functioning well.
She has some disabilities.
She's been that way her whole life. So he and his wife go to their camp, the camp where his daughter goes, and his wife serves the food. Bobby sells CDs and books to raise money. He's just that way. He's a wonderful person, and she's his miracle in his life.
Now, do you have any upcoming shows? I definitely want you to plug your upcoming.
Thank you.
shows.
Pamela's going to be there Tuesday night at Janice Massetti's. She is the most outrageous host MC you'll ever see. She makes the audience come to a fervor. Is that the right way to say it?
Yes.
She's outrageous. That's Tuesday in New York City at 318 West 53rd Street between 8th and 9th at the Broadway Comedy Club at 7:30 show. And Janice is outrageous. I'll be performing there. And what I love about it is I make a video, pay a videographer, and then I have myself a nice tape where I feel confident and people actually laugh. So I give it to bookers and say, would you hire me? So I love it for every reason. And the audience is so good because Janice does that. And Pamela's sweet to come for me. That's so nice. Wednesday. That's Wednesday night. I keep saying Tuesday. It's Wednesday.
Yeah, you said Tuesday. Wait a minute. I think to myself, did I just throw off my schedule? No, it's Wednesday.
I keep saying Tuesday. I don't know. You know, when you get to be like George and I, you're just like, woo, I keep saying Tuesday. And then Thursday night, I'm going to be at Gladys.
You got to lay off the sauce. Happy New Year's.
Ha, 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 ha. Yeah, a year older. So I have a joke about my age, too. I have a couple. But Thursday night, I'll be at Gladys Simon's Pro Show, which is an honor when she puts you in a pro show because she has headlining comics in the show who are old friends of hers. So I'll be in that show at 8:00. And I'm bringing some of my friends from back in the day who I haven't seen in 3 years. So that's a very special show for me, having my friends there, and anyone could come. And then Saturday at 5:30 in the afternoon, I'll be at New York Comedy Club, which I went to with Robin Siegel-Aiken years ago when I first met Robin at Gladys's, of course. And I'll be back there at 5:30. And again, they have pros in that show. And that's at 5:30 on East 24th Street near 2nd Avenue.
Now,
then I have a lot of other shows.
Well, it's perfect because you have any shows. I mean, before we sign off, if you remember any other ones, please let us know. But definitely this Wednesday, we have 10 minutes till we end this Wednesday. As you said, you're going to be performing at Broadway Comedy Club with Janice Massetti.
And you visiting.
I will definitely be there. I will be in the crowd.
I'm saying it because I want people to come and meet you in person.
Thank you. Oh, I will definitely be there. And just so you know, too, what I have planned for 2023 that you and I are going to work on together, we are going to do a dynamic, knock 'em dead, all-female comedy show.
We almost were together. That was bad English, too. We were almost together out on Long Island at a $4,000 show where the people got free pizza. I'm only being sarcastic now, ladies and gentlemen.
No, we are. We have. I have plans for us for 2023. We're going to be doing an all-ladies all ladies powerhouse comedy show. And I definitely want to speak to Linda about it. So when she's back in New York, and some of the other ladies that we've been dropping names on.
Yeah, Ellen Orchid's very funny, and
yes,
there's so many.
Oh, just so you know, just like a little blast from the past. You were not there that day, but it was Ellen, myself, Bruce Lipsky, and George. We had performed comedy one afternoon at the residential home that he was living at the time on the Upper West Side.
Yeah.
It was amazing. I think the minimum age of the residents there were about like 85 years old. But it was a lot of fun. I learned a lot. And you know something, no matter what age we are, we're never too old to laugh. And that's the best part.
That's beautiful. You know what I learned about the older people that I perform for? And I'm going to do this more at the library. I go once a month to the East Meadow Library. It's a free show. You could come. You know what I learned? They like it when you give them personal attention. So I like to say, what's your name? That's a new thing I'm doing. They like to be noticed by their name.
Well, it's true, because I always incorporate on one of my jokes that, and now and then I've actually used George as my comedy victim in the audience for one of these, is when I'm making jokes about, dating men who are 70s and older. It's like dating Mr. Potato Head, because I have to assemble them with their body parts when I bring them home. And sometimes they're missing body, like hair and teeth. And so, of course, I've had to single out George a number of times when I've done that. In fact, I did that for his birthday show at Gladys's.
I was the MC, I remember.
Yep. But
you were there with your funny friend.
Yes. And so I did the joke at the senior home where he was at. And there was a gentleman there. He had to have been 95 years old. And he was surrounded by a couple of women. That was his posse. And so when I made the joke, I said to him, I asked him his name, like his name was Abe. And I go, Abe, how old are you? He goes, I'm 95. He said, I can't see, but I'm not deaf. Why are you yelling at me?
That is so cute.
But it was fun. No, it's nice when you incorporate people into the show. You're right.
I learned that they really crave it. That's the word I'm going to use, crave.
I am so glad that you joined us. Is there anything that you have not told our viewers? Because I want everybody to know all about Helaine.
It's so sweet of you. A lot of times, or my commitment in life is about other people. So like, I'm more interested in Pamela's show succeeding and Pamela succeeding. Not that I don't care about myself, but my life, I've been trained over the years. I call it transformational work, where my life's about other people. Like George knows he could call me. I forgive him for, he needs people. Gladys, I like to empower others. That's it. I like to empower others. Being a school teacher gave me a certain caring for protecting children. Like, to be honest, I don't like when they're in the audience for the show. If I had a child in comedy, I'd put them on first and get them out of there. I don't like them hearing these things. I don't think that's my opinion. I'm giving my opinion right now.
No, that's good, because something, I know everybody has their own, everyone's trying to find their own voice. And I know there was the advice that Gladys gave me was, don't be anybody else up there, be yourself. Mm-hmm. And she told me, she said, you can be funny without having to be really graphic and very vulgar. So she said that doesn't really show talent. Anybody can stand up and do that. It's kind of like, when you're at a party and you always have somebody who gets a little too drunk and boisterous, and then they're saying a lot of things that are very profanity laced, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're funny. So
I stick one in once maybe, and it works.
Well, I had someone stick it in once too, and then I got pregnant. But I have to.
Well, you have a child. Let me ask you this: if you were doing comedy and your son was 10 or 12, and he was funny and he was doing comedy, would you feel, I don't want him exposed to all this, I'll put him on first? Or did you say he's going to learn it in school anyway? He won't understand it. It's not going to hurt his growth.
No, I was very strict in my house. I have now 20. In fact, just to give him a little plug. He is halfway through his basic training right now in the Air Force. He graduates at the end of January.
So exciting. You know, you wouldn't want anything more for your child than a nice, wholesome environment.
Exactly. I was very strict, same thing in my house. There was no cursing allowed in my house growing up. And then even so with my son growing up, I think I used to tell my husband, don't drop the F-bombs. And I think the one time I actually dropped an F-bomb at home, my son was like, Mama, you said the F-bomb. He goes, I'm giving you a timeout. And he put me in the bathroom for half an hour.
Oh, that is a riot.
But he knows, because I told him, I said, open up the dictionary. There are so many words that you can use to describe how you feel without having to speak like that. And because it doesn't show, to me, it shows a lack of intelligence. Some people say that, somebody who curses a lot, that they are very intelligent. I'm like, I'm sorry. I don't think
you're in front of a judge. You went to court yesterday, or the council, whatever you call where you went. You don't hear them going, hey, fuck this, fuck that. Oh.
No way. And
you have to present yourself.
It's how you speak. The first thing, when you walk onto the stage, before anyone hears Helaine open her mouth, before anyone hears Pam open her mouth, okay, the first thing you do is scene, okay? Then, obviously, when you open your mouth, you're either funny or you're not funny, or but depending on what words you use, it kind of sets the mood. So if you're just going to come out, everything is very vulgar and profanity-laced, it kind of sets the mood. Of course, it's a way of getting cheap laughs. I'm not criticizing. If it works for somebody else, fine. But I know that my son actually only came to see me perform twice. And the first time I actually had him view me was on a tape that I did when I was still performing at Dangerfields before COVID. And I rarely, if anything, curse in any of my sets. And I was just very careful. I'm very careful what I say and showing him what it is that I do. But if he was young and he was starting out, if not at 20, if he was young, like say this 12-year-old, it would be, I want them on stage first and get them out of there. Because eventually, yes, they're going to be listening and be exposed to adult conversations, but let a child have his or her childhood first. That's how I feel.
I do too.
Well, I want to thank you so very much for joining.
Thank you, Pamela, and your producer. Thank you so much. I'm so impressed with the advertising you have and the website he has and what you're doing. I'm just blown away.
Now, is there a speaking of website, please, I want everybody to follow Helaine Witt she's going to be performing. Helaine, do you have either a website or an Instagram or Facebook?
Yeah, I'm mostly a Facebook person because I'm a dinosaur. So it's, just like Helaine Witt on Facebook. I do have that website, www.helainewitt.com, but it doesn't have I have a lot. I have podcasts and I have shows. So Facebook is my, what's that word? My speed.
Well, you can follow Helaine Witt on Facebook. You can go to HelaineWitt.com. But like I said, this coming Wednesday, if you're in New York, it is so worth, please come out and see Helaine perform at Broadway Comedy Club. You'll get to meet me also. And let's all go back to supporting live comedy. We're back. Comedy is back. And we need comedy now more than ever because we have way too many things to laugh about. And that's the best part. So thank you for everybody tuning in. Have a happy, sweet, wonderful, successful, and very funny new year. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Pamela.
Thank you, Helaine. Thank you, Anthony.
This broadcast is produced by Griffo Productions.